Welcome back to the channel. I don't think I will watch. Actually, I might watch both. There's two parts to this. Democrats versus Republicans in regards to the election. Jubilee. Jubilee has been getting a lot of flack about like putting Nazis and stuff on their platform. I actually like what Jubilee does. Sometimes it gets a little cringe with certain topics, but it's more cringe, not bad. So I don't know why people are just internet people where they just everything's terrible. I want the world to burn. So Jubilee getting slapped because some emotional woke. It's usually like the emotional, very woke, extreme, childish, immature lefties that's complaining about this stuff. But with that said, let's dive into
How
it.
can the U.S. government strengthen our economy? All right, we're going to start with the Democratic side. You have 5 minutes to select a representative that you think best represents your side's perspective on this issue. And they will go forward and they will debate a representative on this side in the middle.
Yeah, so I have an economics degree and I debate this for 6 hours every single day. It's kind of my specialty, so I would recommend putting me up there to be able to go against them on the data statistics and economic arguments because they're very weak on them, very weak, and it needs to be called out.
Hi, I am not a capitalist. I'm a Marxist. And say, I think that we
Don't clap that. Don't clap that. Put up Parker.
are in late stage capitalism. I think that our country will continue to just die and be atrophied by what we are continuing to do, the way that we are exploiting the working class.
Even though I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a lefty, I'm not a liberal. So I don't mind calling out anything if I think it's dumb and it's bad. Lefties like her, no. No. You know how like the cult for the Trump supporters, they're committed. The equivalent to that would be like the very woke, actual communistic left that took over the entire Democratic Party. But they just haven't. It's a small minority. Loud minority, but small.
I think that we can't continue on with this. So my economic model would be to abolish this economic model and create a new one. Thank you.
No, that's stupid.
Sounds like you guys have some people to vote for.
Favor of the first gentleman, raise your hand.
Yes, everybody.
That's a majority, so
yes.
Parker has been selected
Hell
for
no.
this topic. All right, now I ask that this side, now that you've selected your representative, we're going to switch to the Republican side. You have 4 minutes.
Right.
You're going to manage this time as you see fit.
All right, before everyone raises hands, if you are confident in economic issues, please raise your hand right now. Only if you're confident. Thank you. Okay, there's 2 right now. I'll give you a minute. Go ahead.
I don't have a degree in economics. In fact, I didn't even go to college. But I spent 4 years living in the greatest economy we had seen in this country.
Oh yeah, he's gonna get cooked. He actually made some good points with, like, a prior video I reacted to. Let's see how much
In
of a
decades,
rabbit hole he does.
I saw the amazing things that happened thanks to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and I saw the record low unemployment for my community and for our country as a whole that we saw during the Trump administration, and I'm ready to defend those policies against somebody who thinks they know better than me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm married. I have children. Because of what the Democrat Party has done to America, my wife and I are not having any more kids, and we'd love to have a lot more. We saw how, something simple as like formula.
I love
we
the
couldn't find that in
diversity
the beginning of the Biden administration.
here.
It was going to the border.
You
Why
know?
was it going to the border? Wasn't on our shelves for our
I
children?
mean, the showing the Democrats and Republicans really showcases that identity politics makes no sense because there's representation on both sides. So I just wanted to point that out.
Little things like that. I've just noticed formula going up, clothes, diapers have gone up like crazy. And it's just difficult. You can't have a kid. You can't buy a house. Interest rates are what, 6.5% with the cut. That's unbearable.
Okay, raise your hand for Chandler.
All right, Chandler versus Parker.
It's official,
Oh, my
Ohio.
goodness.
Early
Stop paying
voting
for
is
YouTube
now
Premium.
open. Why wait for election?
All right, Parker,
Playing COD without
Chandler,
sound is so
you have
hard.
10 minutes. Let's see if we can find a middle ground statement that you both agree on.
For sure, yeah. So, like people on the conservative side don't really know how inflation has been caused. It happened globally in Africa, Asia, South America, Central America, Europe, everywhere around the world. So to say it's caused by the Biden-Harris administration, I think isn't true at all. Biden-Harris signed 4.3 trillion debt-related spending into law, 2.2 trillion non-COVID related, whereas the Trump administration had 8.4 trillion overall, 4.8 trillion non-COVID related spending signed into law. So if we're going to talk about the effect in terms of spending,
I'll let you guys read this. Actually, you can pause it. If you want to read the fact check, pause it. 8.4 was added to the debt during the Trump administration. 4.8 was COVID related. Biden approved 4.3 in his first 3 years. So that's less than half.
as it relates to the economy, Trump had a worse effect on inflation if you're referencing that. Secondly, Trump's proposed policy in terms of tariffs would absolutely cause inflation. Economists on the left wing and the right wing agree on this. This is vast across the board, almost a consensus in economics.
What would you target as the direct point of beginning when all this inflation kicked off? Would you connect it to COVID-19?
Yeah, the effect on supply chains.
Okay, and are there any specific Trump administration policies you say, or you mentioned spending? Tell me a bit more about this. I want to hear it.
Yeah, so I don't typically refer to like the level of spending, but if people do reference spending, I do think that it looks worse for Trump. In terms of the overall inflation rate, I think it has to be something that happened globally. You can't just say something that only happened in the United States is the explanation for global inflation when the same trend happened in Africa, Asia, South America, Central America, Europe, everywhere.
But what we have known for decades is that the United States is the global superpower, particularly for the economy. I mean, we spoke about it a little before, that China is starting to rise in this, and that there's a lot going on in 2020 between China and the United States. Would it be not ridiculous to say that COVID-19
Right now, Parker is ahead. I'll give a fair little rating, but
between China and the United States had a big impact on inflation, and then we had the changing of the baton between the Trump administration and the Biden administration, and we had the Inflation Reduction Act come in when the inflation was starting to go up, and we saw it almost multiply after that. Wouldn't you say that there's any connection there?
No, actually, when the Inflation Reduction Act was signed, like a bit after inflation started to come down, I'm not saying it's because of the Inflation Reduction Act. I actually think the Inflation Reduction Act had a marginal effect on inflation. Reports typically say around 0.1% reduction, in the long term, which the main point of it was for foreign energy, right? Because it is the case that if we build up our production of energy in the United States, we're less dependent on foreign oil, so we don't rely on that. Also, it was deficit reducing. To say that was the cause of inflation is utterly absurd.
Okay, well, let's talk about energy. In January of 2021, Joe Biden got into office and he campaigned almost confusingly so, one day for fracking, one day against fracking, one day for energy independence, the next day against energy independence. We saw him get into office and sign numerous executive orders that forbade fracking on federal land, almost forbade us to actually have any of that energy independence. Thus making us more reliant on countries in the Middle East for their oil.
On energy independence, July 19th, the U.S. imported 215,000. Currently
making us more reliant on China for some of their manufacturing. Why would these things not be factors that would multiply the inflation and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act not have any more help on that?
These things came back. The Inflation Reduction Act had leases for fracking. Also, as it relates to the energy production in the United States, we've signed more drilling permits in the United States under the Biden-Harris administration than we saw under Trump. So we've had that plus the largest investment in renewable energy ever through the Inflation Reduction Act. So the most pro-energy policy is through the Biden-Harris administration, not through the Trump administration. This is just a talking point.
And how many of those contracts were actually just re-upping what we previously had in the Trump administration and was eliminated?
Fact checks. I like it. You need to fact check everything.
Via executive orders, because that's what we're seeing a lot with the jobs numbers. For example, we say, oh yeah, Joe Biden created all these jobs. No, these are the recovery jobs after the COVID-19 pandemic, when Democratic governors all across America unanimously said, oh yeah, let's shut down the entire damn country because people have a flu. And I say it was a bad thing.
Even Trump said it's not a flu. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Approximately 16 million jobs have created during the Biden administration. There are 9.4 million fewer jobs in February before the COVID. So many of these jobs were needed just to return to the pre-pandemic levels. And also, people regaining their jobs, why is that a bad thing?
But we had a bad thing happen, and Democratic governors all across the country wanted to shut down the country and shut down the economy, shut down the jobs, make it so that people couldn't go to work.
Shut down the country.
We have jobs come back. We have the inflation start. There's no connection there.
Yeah, so I don't think that all the jobs that came back under the Biden-Harris administration are because of the Biden-Harris administration. That's a correlation causation fallacy. So I agree. Just because it happened under the administration doesn't mean it's caused by them. But seemingly you guys use that all the time for your point on unemployment, saying it was 3.5%. That wasn't a record low. There was 3.4% for 2 separate months under the Biden-Harris administration. Plus for specifically black unemployment, it was lower under the Biden-Harris administration comparative to the Trump administration.
Because they changed very few
hold
policies
up.
in that time.
Touting those particular numbers, not only is it correlation causation fallacy, but it doesn't make your position look better because it was even lower under the Biden-Harris
I'm
administration.
glad you admit it's a fallacy because this is actually a Democratic talking point. In fact, Kamala Harris is probably campaigning on it right now that she says we had the most jobs, we're going to continue to have the most jobs. Most Americans want to ask the question right now, how are you going to fix the inflation?
So he made a point that was a terrible point, and then he just said Kamala Harris. You didn't prove anything. You haven't made a single point then. You're just talking the talk? Okay.
When you've been vice president for something like 1,400 days, and you have Joe Biden, who's been the president for the same amount of time, and he's been in politics since longer than you and I have been alive, probably longer than our parents have been alive. Kamala Harris has kind of come out of nowhere, and she previously had extremely Marxist policies. We saw in the 2019 Democratic presidential debate, she was absolutely failing. In fact, she polled as low as 1%, but suddenly she gets risen up, placed as the vice presidential candidate, and then placed as the presidential candidate. She has had all this time to fix these problems, and the Biden administration has all these times and all the acts that they passed, like the Inflation Reduction Act, to reduce the inflation. It has done nothing but place us further into this catastrophe we have right now with the inflation and the economy.
So I just went over that deficit reducing. No way it caused the inflation that you're referencing. If anything, it had a reduction on inflation, like I referenced in the long run, the 0.1% reduction long term. Again, marginal, so it's not like important to reference. But for the inflation, right now it's 2.5% annually, which is around the same as what it was annually speaking under Trump's administration in 2018, or it was around 2.45%. Also, like, I don't know why we think that like Congress is going to be the one that deals with inflation. That's the Federal Reserve, and they've helped bring inflation down. We had the fastest recovery from inflation in the G7. So to argue like we haven't done something for inflation is utterly obscene, right? Also, Trump, this would have happened if he was president as well. To say that that wouldn't have happened is just economically illiterate. Like,
the Federal Reserve is only just beginning to cut our interest rates, which is only just beginning to stem the problems that we're seeing now. People are going to start feeling the effects of this.
Yeah, it takes a while. You can't do this overnight. And you lied about the inflation rate. So
as we continue to go on, how is Kamala Harris going to do anything to fix this?
Yeah, so again, Kamala Harris isn't the one to do that. It's the Federal Reserve that deals with it. But I just want to ask you one question because you did bring up Marxism. What Marxist policy did she support, and can you define Marxism?
Yeah,
so what I can say with certainty is that Kamala Harris campaigned in 2019, a very failing campaign about redistribution of wealth. She campaigned on the policy of breaking out Black Lives Matter protesters when all they wanted to do was burn down the country during a pandemic, frustratingly and confusingly enough. These are the policies she campaigned on back then that caused her to lose her presidential campaign. And now all of a sudden we're trying to place her as the presidential nominee for 2024. It's confusing to imagine that she could do.
He's just sounds like sounds like he's a smart kid, right? But he's just regurgitating talking points and utilizing that talking points to come to faulty logical conclusions. I'll
anything to fix the economy when her vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, left his windows open so that he could smell the burning tires in Minneapolis.
So again, as it relates to Marxism, you didn't define it there, one. Two, as it relates to this, in terms of like the response to the 2021 protests and riots that you're specifically referencing, Trump literally said that he totally agrees with Tim Walz's response. So I don't know how you're going to walk yourself around that, but please define Marxism real quick.
Okay, listen, we're not getting into the definitions of this. We're getting into the economy.
So you don't know what Marxism is?
We're getting into the economy.
So what is Marxism?
Okay, Marxism. Why do you want me to define this for you?
Because you said Marxism. You said she supports Marxism.
Yeah, he's cooked. Parker cleared this dude. He is cooked. That is, you don't understand the moment he said, "Oh, I lived here for 4 years. I know about the." Nah, bro. No.
His policies. I'm asking, what is
because
Marxism?
We had somebody on your side saying we need to destroy our entire economy so that we can rebuild it from the ground.
What does that have to do with anything? What is that? MAGAs love to obfuscate. That guy over there said this. I'm getting cooked right now, but that person. This is
round up. That's what Marxism is.
And that's a better position than what you just said because you can't even define it.
Quiet.
Like, what is it?
Do you want to define it?
I would completely ban clapping and cheering. I'm not gonna lie. I would completely ban it because it makes people very uncomfortable. Yes, it feels good when people are cheering you on, but it doesn't provide a environment for productive conversation when you have a crowd, right? It just doesn't. Um, I would ban it. If I'm Jubilee, I would ban no clapping, none of that, none of that. Just let them have their 1v1 conversation.
Yes, yeah. Marxism
ahead.
is an economic and political philosophy specifically targeted at looking how capitalism affects how people engage socially speaking. And it's associated with things like socialism and communism being a stateless, classless, moneyless society, and socialism being when the workers democratically control the means of production. So if you want to talk about what these terms are, let's talk about it, but for what they are, not just like some buzzword that you're referencing, because Trump says it all the time. Because he said that Kamala Harris deserves some MAGA hat, but then also has Marxist policy. Does she have his policy? Or is she a Marxist? Which one is it? You can't have both.
Facts.
I'm gonna
Facts.
just stop you guys here. You have a minute and a half. Marxism aside.
Before that?
Sure, you can start us off, but I want you guys to start. I'm nudging you towards offering compromises. What's a middle
sure.
ground?
Yeah, so my specific offer for middle ground would be things like let's expand access to healthcare, let's expand access to childcare, let's make housing more affordable by the $25,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers for new homes to build up supply in places where people want to live. For small businesses, a $50,000 tax cut in terms of the deductibles to reduce their taxable income to make it easier in the first year for businesses. Those are things that I want to target. But the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is not the way to do it. Most of the money went to rich people. I can send you a paper from a liberal and conservative economist from Harvard that only shows it went up in 0.04%
Okay, Parker, we
annually.
gotta stop. I have to stop you. I'm sorry.
The middle ground I will offer.
Anything in there you agree on?
I will offer, and I will agree on that we need more tax cuts for more people. I'm not saying we need to send government money to healthcare. We've talked about this before where we pull trillions of dollars out of nowhere.
There's no middle ground there. More tax cuts. You just Chandler is that's tough.
For causes like this, and I think they're great causes. I think healthcare access and childcare access are great things, but I do not believe these are things that we need to throw government money at. I think we need to reduce taxes on businesses and privatize as much as we can to allow corporations, businesses, small businesses too, that operate clinics, that operate home daycare centers, to be able to give people, parents, people that want to own homes access to these things without the government saying we're the government and we're here to help.
I would agree on tax cuts for like families, for middle class Americans, not tax cuts for rich people, right? I don't see any reason economically speaking to do that.
I can agree with tax cuts, but I can also say we need to reduce a lot of funding for the IRS. We hired something like 80,000 new IRS agents to target the middle class.
We clearly
that we're not helping.
Judging by Parker's reaction, we don't agree on that. So
Sure.
the middle ground statement that I'm hearing, at the bare minimum, you both agree that we should do a tax cut on the middle class.
Tax cuts on the middle class.
I'd agree on that.
I like how you need to
Tax cuts. Yeah. Okay. Raise of hands high and confidently if you agree.
Also, like, the reason why people shouldn't clap and cheer is the people who are getting cooked, they're more on the defensive, and they're less likely to, like, they're less likely to find common ground or want to find common ground because they want to save face.
Cuts on the middle class.
When we vote, we send a message that we will be heard.
We send a message that we will be heard.
We send a message that we will be heard.
And with so much at stake,
Our fundamental right to vote
is on the line.
We can't afford to miss this chance.
Vote by November 5th.
For 3 years in a row, Chevy has earned more J.D. Power Initial Quality Awards than any other brand. With the high-tech SUV, the all-electric
Put them down. Raise your hand if you don't agree with that. Okay, let's hear from a disagreeer on that side.
So personally, I feel like a tax cut to the middle class wouldn't help us. If I'm being honest, as a Marxist, as a person who is
I'm not listening to a freaking Marxist. I'm not gonna lie. I'm moving on. Let's see. I'll hear the Republican though.
Who on this side, did anybody disagree with the middle class tax cut? I want to hear from you first.
Hi. So I disagree that we should give tax cuts to the middle class. I have been middle class for a long time. I'm 23 years old. I've been in the workforce for a very long time. I think that if we are going to give tax cuts everyone deserves tax cuts. It is not a matter of should we tax the rich more, because I don't know about all of you guys, but I would like to be rich. I would like to own multiple businesses.
That's a terrible excuse. I want to be rich and I don't want to get taxed. That's a fundamental disconnect on the reason why we have taxes. That's fundamentally disconnected. Are you saying everybody gets taxed, or everybody shouldn't get tax cuts or should get tax cuts? What? Okay, let me listen to her and try to see what she's trying
would like
to say.
to own a mansion. And how dumb would that sound if I was like, yeah, we're going to tax the rich, and then in 4 years I become rich and I'm like, damn it. Okay, well.
That's such a stupid point. That's a terrible point. When you become rich, the becoming rich is not. I think people just care. This comes to a more like selfish thinking. Like, how are you gonna represent yourself as a Republican and being part of politics without understanding that the purpose of taxes is contributing back into the society you become rich in, right? You know, you just want I would hope you would want people of your community, you want people in the same country as you want them to live their best life too. Unless you only care about yourself and you just want to hoard all your money, and at that point, that's selfish and greedy and
Maybe I don't want to be rich anymore. It's not going to help, and
you could be rich.
I would argue that more people on the Republican side of the working force are tradesmen that are middle class, and more people on the right are trying to become millionaires. You guys always say that Republicans are the rich people. I would argue that especially in this generation.
She's just talking. I'm just moving on. She's just chatting. Nothing she says it makes sense.
Systemic racism still an issue in the U.S. We're going to go to the Democrats.
All right. This issue, I might agree with the Republicans, because I don't believe systematic racism is still an issue in the United States. But I'll be right back. Now, I will say this. Depending on what a Republican says, I will say that they are becoming a little bit more openly racist towards just racists in general, towards like illegal immigrants. Oh my goodness, they are becoming bad with that. And the pushback against DEI doesn't even make sense, to be honest. I do think like certain times they can get too far with affirmative action. I was in the camp that, yeah, affirmative action probably is not the best, because you already know. I don't have to break it down. But we'll see how this conversation goes.
First to choose their speaker.
To the right.
Yeah, I think I would like to talk on this topic because I come from Nigeria, where the majority of the people there look like me. So I could also use that as experience to talk about how that differs in America and how like the ingrained systemic racism affects people of color in a way that it doesn't in racial sameness nations. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Connie. I would like to speak on this issue particularly because I have a lot of intersection in my identity as a Black and Native American woman. And I am also a victim of police violence. I'm a woman who has a mixed race son who is Black. So I think that I am very qualified to speak on this. I do BLM stuff. Before we take a vote, I would just like to say that I used to be a conservative. I used to be a Black conservative. So I am also very well versed on these arguments. I would also like to say I'm very interested in the theory of racism. I love people like Angela White Davis. So I can speak from that front. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start the vote. Nigeria, raise your hand, everyone.
Yeah, I don't want Connie there.
4, 5, 6.
Okay, great. Connie.
No.
Looks like Connie has the majority.
Okay, done.
She might actually make a good argument. I'm not going to...
All right. We're going to move to the Republicans. You have 3 minutes to select your speaker.
All right. If you are confident on race relations in America, please raise your hand.
So I am speaking from the perspective, I grew up in a
really
very
wanna hear
far
from a
left
white
family.
person.
I
That
was
would've
super
been
woke my
hilarious.
entire life, so much so that in 2020 I was cast to be on a Netflix show teaching people how to become a BLM activist. In the process getting ready for that show, I started studying the counter arguments, and it completely flipped my perspective of being Black in America. And I realized being Black in America is a very easy life. So I would love to speak on this topic. It's what I do
Oh, this guy was on Piers Morgan's show where he got cooked by Destiny. Okay.
for a living.
All right, I feel like I'm best to argue this topic because I'm Black in America. I experience it every single day, and it's what created my political
literally
views. And I
everybody's
feel like
argument.
I'd
I'm Black
be
in
pretty
America.
good up
I know
here,
how to talk
discussing
about
this
this.
with somebody.
So personally, my vote wasn't going to be for me. It was going to be who I think should go. We have Connie on the other side, who is a previous conservative Black woman. So I think for honestly fairness sake, we should have someone who is a previous left-wing black man. I think that would be a great topic and discussion to have.
So, who votes for Xavier? Raise your hand.
All right, Xavier's the speaker. Connie and Xavier, let's come to the middle.
Or they misspelled it.
When I heard Bernie Moreno got taken to court for gender discrimination, when he belittled an employee for being a single mom, and then firing her when she complained, as a working mom, I had to speak out. Ohio deserves better than Bernie Moreno.
$37 million in advertising based on a lie.
The claim that Brown voted to let transgender biological men participate in women's sports is false.
Why are special interests breaking spending records lying about Brown? They can't buy
Republicans are
him.
becoming more openly racist.
Nice to meet you, Xavier. That's a very king name, Xavier.
I know that's right.
Hey.
So I don't believe that we have a systemic racism issue in America anymore. I feel like we have a systemic disempowerment issue. And what I mean by that is really two things. First, let's start with the rhetoric that is put on black people. So you and I disagree on pretty much everything politically, and I will fight tooth and nail for you to be able to speak your piece and say what it is that you feel. But me, as a black conservative, I'm called an Uncle Tom and a sellout. And it makes you just sit and wonder, who is it that I'm being sold out from? This belief system that we have to have this unapologetic, unwavering perspective of just loving what the Democrats tell us to believe is an issue. And it goes into the BLM thing and how for so long we were told that we are supposed to be terrified of police officers who are literally the people who are supposed to be protecting us. The other part of that is when we start looking at what is actually hurting us on a systemic level. Let's look at policy. One of the biggest things that are hurting Black Americans today is policy regarding crime. We have all of these woke DAs who are putting forth policy about or getting rid of policies, I should say, with like the 3 strikes rule, which is allowing repeat offenders on the street. We got rid of the cash bail system, which again is letting criminals back on the street. And all this different lists of issues where they're even decriminalizing theft under $900. Who is that destroying? Businesses and opportunities in Black predominant areas. So when we talk about why we're still struggling, that has a big reason because we're losing our opportunities.
You steal something under $950 and that's only a misdemeanor? 950? So you steal my iPhone, you get a misdemeanor? Nah, you better go to jail, boy. Better go to jail.
Yeah. I would just like to say that I empathize on every position that you have that you explained to me, especially when talking about people calling you names, people saying really mean and nasty things to you, demeaning you because of your race, I would argue. I experienced that as a Black conservative, and it was the hardest part of being a Black conservative. But I don't understand how you can have this perspective as a Black man in America that there is no racial tension and no racial discrimination when we as Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die giving birth. When Black men are twice as likely to be killed on death row.
I don't see the correlation. What does this have to do with I don't get the point here. Okay.
Than white men for committing similar crimes. When you have the Hopi Nation of people who don't have clean water to drink, there's a diabetes.
There were 2,000 inmates on death row in the United States, with 41% being white, 40% being Black. 56% of those executed have been white. 34. What was the point she made?
I would just like to say that I empathize on every position that you have that you explained to me, especially when talking about people calling you names, people saying really mean and nasty things to you, demeaning you because of your race, I would argue. I experienced that as a Black conservative, and it was the hardest part of being a Black conservative. But I don't understand how you can have this perspective as a Black man in America that there is no racial tension and no racial discrimination when we as Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die giving birth. When Black men are twice as likely to be killed on death row than white men for committing similar.
White people death row thing, I don't know if I believe that one. More people getting in jail, definitely Black compared to white. I do think there is a certain level discrimination you could probably get into there. in terms of getting jailed in general. I don't know about the death row thing, but the jailed in
similar
general.
crimes. When you have the
That's an
Hopi
interesting
nation
point.
of people who don't have clean water to drink, there's a diabetes epidemic because there is no clean, accessible water that they are able to afford. I don't understand how
I
you
don't
can
know
have
how
these
that's a
positions that there is no racial disparities and that these things weren't set up against us when there is so much going against us in this country. I would say, as a woman who has experienced police violence, I was pregnant when I experienced police violence. I told them I was pregnant and they still mishandled me. They did not see me as a
I get the emotional point. That's fine. I understand it. It doesn't sell me on the racism part. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. But anytime a cop does negative, I don't know the details, so I'm not gonna side with her or side with the cops. But any situation where the cop is mishandling his the situation, he's being overly aggressive, he deserves fault for that. Because there's a clip, I'm sure you guys saw it, where the guy was searching this one woman who was getting arrested, and this other cop is like, "Bro, what are you doing?" And then he had to apologize to the woman getting detained because, like, bro, you're doing too much. Like, I've been critical of that 100%.
citizen. They did not see me as somebody to serve and protect. And by the way, there is no constitutional basis for serve and protect. They are not constitutionally obligated to serve and protect you. I just want to tell you this. I told them I was pregnant and they still mishandled me. They didn't see me as somebody to protect. They saw me as a... That's what they saw.
So a lot to unpack with that, and I'm truly sorry that happened to you. I think one thing to start with the middle ground that we can agree on is that, or two things really, is that there is still racial tension. Now, if that's a systemic thing, I wouldn't say. Are you going to encounter racist people? Absolutely. Are you going to encounter racist people in positions of power? Unfortunately, absolutely. That's a very real thing, and I do think when it comes to the criminal justice system, even Black conservatives, look at the Blexit movement. One of the biggest things that the Blexit movement, which stands for Black Exit, exiting the left, is criminal justice reform. So with that being said, I empathize with what you're saying, and I understand your perspective there. But that being said, when it comes to systemic racism, that would infer that there's this whole system that is holding you down because you're a Black woman.
But there is.
But here's the thing: is there's not. There's over 2 million Black millionaires in America. Black women are outpacing in education in so many different metrics compared to every single demographic. I mean, just look at yourself. I mean, just hearing you sound very educated. You can't have all of these different success and be self-made in a country that is oppressive to you because of your skin color. We've seen what that looks like in the past, and that is just not the situation that we're in anymore. Because as I look at you as a Black woman, there is not a single thing that this white man, no shade, can do that you can't do. You are capable.
I would like to disagree with you because I think that all throughout American history, we have had Black people, we have had indigenous people, we have Chicano people, we have people of all races and colors that have beat the odds, but that does not mean that those odds are not there. That does not mean that those odds are not there. A lot of people on the conservative side like to say, like, oh, well, you have all the same legal rights and responsibilities that I have. There's no law against you as a Black person.
Okay, what's the point she's about to make?
Correct.
The law is not an entity in and of itself. Law is a social construct. We enact laws in everything that we do every day of our life. And the way that people enact laws is what affects these disparities, what allows Black men to be imprisoned for the same drugs that white men are doing, what allows Black women to be dying on operating tables, giving the same birth to the same babies that white women are
giving birth and dying racist? Like, I don't get that point. But I already conceded the point she just made. That does happen. Localized racism for sure is still a thing. No denial. And stereotyping based off assumption of character is still a problem. So I won't deny that either.
Are giving. And so I think that if we're talking about America in and of itself, why are we having these discussions about Ahmaud Arbery? Why are we having these discussions about Breonna Taylor? Why are we having these discussions about Frank Tyson, who was killed in my hometown because they kneeled on his chest? He was dying and he begged them to help him and they said, shut
You're not appealing to my emotion. Bad stuff happens, right? Those were terrible situations. No question about it. No question about it. Well, I'll let Xavier respond.
the F up, and he died there under their knee.
So a couple quick things with that. So with some of the issues you were talking about, such as black women dying on the operating table, unfortunately what that's a socioeconomic issue. And I feel like what a lot of people attribute to being an issue that has to do with systemic racism is really socioeconomic, because you don't see wealthier black people having those issues at the same rate. If it was a systemic racism issue, it would have to do with race, not to do with wealth. And then when we look at situations like some of the names you said, let's start with Breonna Taylor. The way that the media lies to black people to gaslight us into thinking that we need to be terrified of police officers is absolutely unacceptable. If you really look into the tea that happened with Breonna Taylor, we were lied about. They lied to us about that whole situation. Breonna
Are you
Taylor,
talking about the Tatum report? That one?
I'm talking about all of it. I'm talking about the whole system. I don't need to look at what Brandon Tatum has to say about it, but I think he had a lot of intelligence things to say about it. Because if you go and you look at the actual facts of what happened with Breonna Taylor, she was knee deep in that criminal investigation. That being said, with the reason I bring that up, because I'm not saying that her dying was something that should have happened. However, you can't ignore that her boyfriend shot first. You can't ignore that they were at the right house. When I first heard about Breonna Taylor, back then, I was a BLM activist. I was out there marching for—
Okay, Breonna fired first when police broke the door off the hinges. The bullet hit a car in the thigh. He later told police he thought Taylor's ex-boyfriend was attempting a break-in. Officer returned fire, including one officer who fired 10 rounds blindly. It depends on do they have just cause to invade their home?
For Breonna Taylor, literally, because I thought that this black woman was minding her business, laying in her bed, and a police officer came and shot her in the window.
Okay, but
that
you
is
have
not what
homeowners'
happened.
rights. If we're talking about guns, you as a homeowner, you do not know who is entering your home. You have the right to shoot.
They announced.
No, they didn't, because
Yes,
there's
they
actually
did.
3 different neighbors who each contested that they did not announce themselves. But if I'm being honest, it's not even
Yeah, I
just
don't think he's gonna
socioeconomic,
win
because
this
they did the
Breonna
same
Taylor
study with black women and white women of the same socioeconomic stature, and black women still died more.
Yes.
Why are we poor? Because this country was set up to make us poor. Because we were given a culture of desperation that makes us poor.
She's doing
Because
well.
we were
She's
set
doing
down
well.
hundreds of years down the line. We do not have the education we do
In
need.
certain
We
aspects. Some
do
things
not
are
have the
just
reparations we
emotionally
need.
charged,
We do
that
not
I'm
have
not
everything
buying.
we need to thrive and to strive. They killed our leaders. They killed Martin Luther King. They killed.
Who's they?
I'm talking about the CIA, the FBI, the American government.
That's T. That's T.
And you lost me.
I actually have a middle ground thing that she
Yeah.
just said.
So let's let Connie start, and then you respond.
Okay.
What's a middle ground you want to offer between the two of you?
I think I would agree with you that the black community and many communities of color are currently suffering a crisis.
What I would say I agree with you on is
That
that
was-
black people were essentially set up to fail in this country, but the thing
That she didn't even try. I could tell the type of person Connie is. It's just she's not going to be convinced no matter what you say.
is, if we're really
Her-
going to get
her-
into it,
her-
who set us up to fail? The Democratic
emotions are too
Party.
strong.
I mean, if we look at everything just from the welfare system, are you familiar with the whole origin of that? And then a lot of people try to say, oh, they switched sides. No, they didn't. That is a myth. But when you look at the welfare system, it was set up to keep us poor.
I'm not hearing any overlap. I'll give
I
you
heard a lot.
Okay, let's give you one more chance.
We need to give our communities of color more.
I'm glad the moderator, because I would have been like, what the, y'all are not saying. I'm more blunt. He's too nice. Let me moderate, Jubilee. If you have me as a moderator, I know I'm a pretty brash person now, but if you've seen my podcast episodes, I'm an excellent moderator. Let me moderate, man. I'll get them
tools to
get them
thrive
down
in this
business.
country.
I think we need to give all Americans
Color.
a lot.
Okay, let's give you one more chance.
We need to give our communities of color more tools to thrive in this country.
I guess.
I think we need to give all Americans more tools to thrive in this country. And I think that we've already given Black Americans so many. I mean, just look at affirmative action and DEI, but no one wants to have that conversation.
Affirmative action actually benefits white women the most.
Oh, I've seen.
Here we go. Okay. Yeah, Xavier won, bro. I'm moving on. Let's go to the next one.
In the middle.
A vote for Sherrod Brown is a vote against Donald Trump, partial birth abortion, men and girls sports and bathrooms, amnesty for illegals. He's the opposite of Trump's agenda. Liberal Sherrod Brown, he's for they, them, not you.
Trans girls in bathrooms.
Open the door to quick and consistent bookings on Booking.com.
The Middle East is escalating. What should the U.S.'s stance be? Let's go to our Democrats first. You are going to elect your speaker
War in the
for
Middle
this
East,
issue.
pro-Palestinian. I might side with Republicans again, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm back. I'm very hydrated. Don't blame me. But yeah, on my side of Republicans. But recently, Israel has been getting unhinged. Netanyahu's been unhinged. I'm not gonna lie. So this is either one's game. I started out being, yeah, Israel has every right to protect themselves and get rid of Hamas, to Israel won't chill at all. They are going all the way. They're like, I don't want a ceasefire. This is like legit. So we'll see.
So I've been speaking about this issue for many years, not just since
depends on who's
the
more
war,
informed will win this
started
one.
to happen.
We need a Muslim
I
and a Jew.
believe that the United States has allowed Israel
Is
to
Jew
act with
offensive?
impunity for too long. With our
In
direct
South Park,
aid support,
they
it is
say a
against
lot.
U.S. law and international law to supply weapons to a country that is violating international humanitarian rights, which is something that I can demonstrate that the U.S. State Department has empirically shown via their agencies. I diverge from the Biden-Harris administration on this, but I also
it's
do
1-1
believe that
right
Trump
now,
would be worse on
Republicans,
this issue.
Democrats.
He moved the embassy, the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. He
Okay.
15 seconds.
I'm going to do this in 10 seconds. I know who I am. I know what the other side can do, and I know what YouTube.
I want the other guy. Anybody who says, because I already know this. You're not going to say anything.
Is going to do to me. They'll denigrate me as an angry Arab man because my.
Okay.
I ever will.
I want the other
I spoke
guy.
with him too. I vouch for him. All right, your name. Like me.
Sounds like we.
Also, I spoke with him earlier.
I spoke with him too. I vouch for him. All right, your name.
Evan.
He sounds the most informed by far.
My name's Evan.
All right.
Good thing he didn't go. He would have got cooked. He doesn't.
And now the Republicans, you have 3 minutes. Go.
All right, before we begin, if you are confident on Israel relations and the war in the Middle East, please raise your hand.
Who's Jewish? That's what you need. A Jewish person.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll start with you.
So I think everybody on this side can agree that we are America first. That's why it's important to emphasize that this is an American issue. We still.
What should America stand to be in the war in the middle? Oh, I guess you don't have to be pro-Israel. You can be pro-isolationist and be unhinged and think that we should never help any of our allies. If that is the Republican stance, you're getting cooked. I'm not gonna lie. I think she might have I think she's Jewish though. I think she looks Jewish.
Still have hostages over in Israel. I've gone there 3 times in the last year to educate myself on this. And what I've realized is they are our most consequential ally and we need to stand by them.
Okay.
However, as much as I've educated myself on it, someone I've learned so much from is Dr. Sheila. So I would love to see you take this topic.
So I think
What's the point of you talking? I'm not gonna lie. What's the point of you talking other than liking to hear your own voice? If we all know she should go up. Okay. All right. We know who's going up. So. Sharing at the beginning, sharing at the end, sharing during.
All right.
Okay.
So just a reminder, the goal is to try and find an agreement, a middle ground statement that you would both stand by, and then we'll share it with the group. But you have 10 minutes to discuss the issue and get to that point.
Yeah, so I think one thing we can agree on is that it is against U.S. law under the Leahy Law and the Foreign Assistance Act to supply military aid to a country that is violating international law abroad. And we know from the U.S. Department of International Aid and Development, as well as the U.S. State Department for Refugees and Migrants, that Israel is guilty of blocking and obstructing humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, particularly within the first few months of the war. And that's why the ICC chief prosecutor that Israel said was their preferable candidate has applied for arrest warrant applications to top Israeli officials. It is also why the ICJ is currently on trial with Israel for a case of genocide, and why the ICJ has already weighed in on that the illegal occupation in the West Bank needs to end. And we also have had a Security Council resolution when the United States abstained from the Security Council that once again there should be an immediate ceasefire. The only time that the most amount of hostages were put back in Israel was when there was a ceasefire and a negotiation and a hostage exchange between Hamas and Israel. Israel has actually killed more of their hostages than they've rescued. They have shot and killed Israeli hostages waving a white flag, speaking Hebrew. That is the kind of conduct that Israel uses in this war.
There's a lot that was put into that first statement. First of all, the ICC had to push off their case against the genocide of Israel for lack of evidence. Number one, I'm speaking now. Number two, oh my God, there is so much. So
fair. She is speaking, so I don't know why he tried to interrupt after one statement. That's kind of rude. Also, stop snapping and cheering. It's so cringe. Control yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Control yourselves.
Oh, okay. Israel is our #1 ally. There is so much work between Israel and the United States, and I understand the America First strategy, but you have to understand there is so much intelligence going back and forth to keep Americans and Israelis safe from all of the terrorists coming out of the Middle East, #1. #2, Israel's fighting 7 fronts right now. They just killed a Hezbollah leader that murdered 142 Marines, that had a bounty on his head by America. That has happened now twice where Israel has murdered terrorists because they had killed not only U.S. military personnel, but also were just bombarding Israel. And they don't care who they kill, Muslims, Christians, Jews, mosques. They don't care. They just inadvertently bomb the city. Okay, #1. #2, there is no genocide. Let me explain why. The Palestinian population went from 500,000.
Now, she could either really lose everybody or really make a strong case. We'll see. Saying that there's no genocide, because that is a topic of controversy. So we'll hear her out.
People in the 1940s to 5 million right now, as opposed to an actual genocide where the Jews in Nazi Germany went from a population of 10 million to 4 million. I'm not done. That is an actual genocide. Why is Israel so good at so many things, but they're just...
Okay, what was her point? So her point was the entire time the Palestinian population has grown under the quote-unquote Israeli occupation. What they're doing now, that would be a counter. I'll just let her go. I'm gonna stay out of it. I'll let her
so go. Crappy. A genocide. Why is the population booming? #2, what else did he bring up? Occupation. Okay. When I did my genetic testing, it says in my genetic testing, Judea. It tells me that I come from, my indigenous homeland is Judea. No other religion, when you do your genetic testing, is gonna say you come from here or from here, from here. It doesn't say that because Judaism predates the current definitions of ethnicity and religion. It's an ethno-religion, and this is an indigenous homecoming of Jews. The other thing, I know the left always likes to say this is oppressed versus oppressor, or it's darker people versus white people. Israel is 70% non-white. They look like me. Okay, there are people of color that have returned home after being sent out from all other places. If you look at the populations of Yemen, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, where hundreds of thousands of Jews used to live there, and now there's less than 50. And in a lot of states, 1 Jew left. So don't talk to me about apartheid. Arabs are allowed in Israel, no Jews are allowed in Gaza. Don't talk to me about apartheid. Don't talk to me about occupation. Don't talk to me about genocide.
So the first thing, you said that the ICC dismissed the case of genocide.
They didn't dismiss it. They pushed it out because they don't have enough evidence.
You don't know what the ICC is because it's the ICJ that is actually conducting.
ICJ, I'm sorry. I work with an organization called ICC. I apologize.
Yeah, so the ICJ is still continuing.
Right, but they don't have enough evidence to close their case. So they have to push it out.
If you know anything about, for example, the Rwandan genocide or the case in Bosnia, these sorts of cases take years to finalize.
So we'll see
they've already given a preliminary ruling that there is sufficient enough evidence that there is a plausible case to be made for the case of genocide. And the reason for that is because, again, the ICC Chief Prosecutor Kareem Khan, who Israel's was preferred candidate, has said he has sufficient enough evidence to believe that top Israeli officials were using starvation as a weapon of war. And in terms of in terms of the debate regarding occupation, that has nothing to do with genetics. The occupation is a political reality. It depends on what sorts of states have legitimacy or sovereignty over a specific land. And the ICJ, once again, has already made their ruling that the occupation within the West Bank is illegal. Wait, do you dispute whether or not the occupation by Israel is illegal in the West Bank? And do you dispute that Netanyahu is attempting to annex Area C?
I dispute the word occupation wholeheartedly and altogether. Because the tomb of Rachel, who is a Jewish matriarch, is in the West Bank. Do you know I cannot go visit the tomb of Rachel, who is in the Bible, because Jews are not allowed to go into the West Bank without getting lynched? #2, who brought the ICJ case? Who brought it?
South Africa.
Why? Because they were going broke There was about to be literally a coup against them, and Iran came and said, we'll pay your debts if you do this for us.
So
okay?
I just want to.
And then, but a ton of other countries have joined the ICJ.
Because they're anti-Semitic. Look at the UN.
I want to.
Don't laugh. I come from this.
Quiet. Sheila, I want to. Can you just clarify your opinion on the settlements in the West Bank?
So I think that everybody should be able to live in these areas. I don't think there should be parts of Israel where Arabs cannot go, and I don't think there's parts of Israel where Jews cannot go without fear of being lynched. So these things, there's no reason why we can't live together. And I'll tell you why the reason is, maybe this is our common ground actually. When I grew up in Iran, okay, they would tell us, as I was in kindergarten, they would tell us, scream death to this, death to that, death to America, death to Israel, when I was a child. And we know for a fact that in Palestine, they're doing the same thing. We've shown images of their TV shows where it's a fake Mickey Mouse saying, stop the Jew, stop the Jew. This is teaching hate from a young age to children that don't know any better, and it is brainwashing, and it is hateful, and it is child abuse. Once we raise these children to love, to value life, to believe that we can thrive and we don't have to kill Jews, and our thriving is more important than killing Jews, they will have a future. They will have a future.
Is that your middle ground?
That is my middle ground.
Netanyahu's own administration, with people like the National Security Advisor Ben-Gvir as well as Smotrich, don't even deny the existence of a Palestinian
That's two people.
Wait, stop. I let you speak.
Go ahead.
In terms of where we may find a middle ground, I do believe that, yes, I believe in freedom within the land and also equal rights within the land.
Absolutely.
But that entails in the dismantling of an ethno-state that is centered around prioritizing the religion and ethnicity of one indigenous group over another.
What about all of the Muslim
ultimately
lands? What about North Africa? What about all of the Middle East?
They're not Palestinians.
Okay,
they're not
but what about those
Palestinians.
states?
They're
Would you
different
say the
people.
same thing? Those are ethno states? Would you want to dismantle those as well?
It seems like we're derailing.
No, there's double standards against Israel that they're not against any other country.
Does Israel have an explicit demographic issue and that they would not accept an...
I don't think bringing up other states is a good good retort to what he said, though. I mean, I think everything's contextual and individualized, and in this situation, having an ethno state, I don't live there, so I can't really say, but I live in America and we don't have an ethno state. So go America. I believe in freedom of religion.
Israel that is majority non-Jew. Yes or no?
Well, this is the case.
Yes or no?
No, let me tell you.
Yes or no?
Stop. There's no yes and no, because this is nuanced, and that's why we are here. You cannot give majority to a people that want you dead. That is the end of your country.
So the answer to that is yes, they have an explicit law.
There's no law.
Yes,
there is no law.
They do have a nation state law that they passed in 2019, and the Israel's own Supreme Court has actually declared that there's no such thing as the identity of being Israeli, because it would undermine the Jewish identity and Jewish character of Israel. What is we as Americans, and I heard some of that sentiment before. Once again, I'll
ruled against a group who wanted to put Israeli on their state issue ID cards rather than Jewish. What was the point though? Just let
circle sort of back. And I never heard a response to any of the initial points I made.
Yeah, but we don't have time. Just what are you trying to state?
That the U.S. should not be supplying weapons and aid to a country explicitly violating international law. We know for a fact the occupation is against international law. The ICJ, which is the highest court of land,
we don't agree here. But what were you saying about an individual state with equal opportunity?
Yeah, a secular, binational state where there is equal rights and freedom of movement for all those within the land.
And
where can Arabs and Muslims in Israel? They're physicians. You know, when all the physicians got pulled into the war, guess who was the physicians in Israeli hospitals saving lives? They were the Arab physicians. There's Arabs in the judiciary. There's Arabs in the government. Show me that in Gaza. Show me that in Gaza. Show me that in the West Bank.
Wait.
Stop clapping.
Okay,
so
there's plenty of disagreement. I think that's very clear. Respect both of your passion, but it does sound like there could be some middle ground on one state solution with equal representation. I'll let you both take a swing at that.
I'll take a swing at that. Knowing and coming from the Middle East, and knowing what they teach children, the only way that there can be a one state, the only way that there can be peace in that region is when you stop teaching kids to hate. And the same thing we did in Nazi Germany with denazification and de-radicalization of the youth needs to happen to these innocent children in Gaza and the West Bank, to teach them that their lives and their ability to thrive and their opportunity matters more than killing Jews.
Yeah, I believe that the best and most effective way of de-radicalizing people is not giving them a reason for armed, violent resistance, which is an end to the occupation and an end to the human rights abuses, and in granting Palestinians full autonomy and sovereignty over their homeland.
Even if it means your children die in a bomb?
No, I don't advocate the war, you do.
No, I don't. We never started a war.
Shut up! Oh my God, they're so childish. This is not a freaking game. This is an important conversation. People who cheer are immature. Like, Jesus. For me, I'm reacting to the content. So obviously I got to be expression and all that. But if I'm sitting there listening to the conversation, I'm not cheering. I'm not going, yeah, you suck. This is not a football game. Childish, man. People are childish.
Started any wars.
I'm gonna give you.
Never. This is not a war we wanted.
I'm gonna give you both one more chance.
Hey, man. Moderating's tough, man. Moderating's tough. You gotta lock in.
Every war was started by the Arabs. Every single one.
Okay. As succinctly as you can, a middle ground statement.
It's de-radicalization of these innocent children that are being taught to hate from.
You're not gonna get it. I'm not gonna lie. This might be the most heated one. Israelis and Arabs.
Birth, which was the same thing that was happening in certain parts of Iran when I was growing up, and I've seen it firsthand.
She's not going to concede, and he's not going to concede because she's not going to concede because they're both very impassioned.
We need to teach our kids to love each other. We need to teach our kids
I have to stop you though. I think we do have that. And then what would your statement be in the shortest form possible, Evan?
That the United States shouldn't be supplying military aid to a country.
Okay, he's not. You could have at least agreed that I do think we need to teach our kids to love each other. He's not. They're both acting like children. I'm not gonna lie. Moving on to this.
How should America?
When voting rights are under attack, it's use it or lose it.
Who won that one? I think it was a draw. So it's 1-1 draw right now, in my opinion. As for immigration, if the left knows their facts,
the current crisis
they're
at the border. You have 5 minutes to choose your speaker on this topic. It begins now.
When voting rights are under attack, it's use it or lose it.
If
vote.
we're going straight talking points, the right's gonna win.
I'm the first one to graduate in my family. DeVry really helped make it all achievable.
This is a topic I've been reading about a lot lately, and it seems like a lot of the Republican talking points we hear very often are just based on complete lies or just complete
I want him to talk. Right here. Him.
Interpretation of the facts, whether we're talking about people that actually cross the border illegally or people that are seeking asylum that they just call illegal immigrants, but like it's much more complicated than that. And I think there are a lot of talking points that I've heard from the right that I have pretty good rebuttals to. If you actually look at the numbers, the narrative they're painting is just not true at all.
So this is a topic I'm also passionate about, and I agree with a lot of what you said. Literally all of the statistically sound data does not support the Republican position on this issue. For instance, native-born Americans are more likely to commit crime than immigrants. And that's just the truth. So I would love to get into it with data, but it doesn't have to be me.
All right, so it seems like we've got kind of two people that we're leaning towards, Adam and Ryan.
Oh,
Let's get a raise of hands for
the
Ryan.
other guy should be going.
Ryan is our far corner. All right, and then can I get a raise of hands for Adam?
It's like even.
I think it should be a person of color. I'm going to be honest. I think a person of color should speak on the immigration.
Shut up. Shut up. Oh my. What? Shut. Oh, yo. Oh my goodness. He's one of the worst kind of lefties. He's one of the worst kind of lefties. Oh, hey. If I'm Ryan, I'm going like, but I'm gay. I'm like, but I'm gay. I'm marginalized too. Oh man, come on, that was a W joke. Come on.
It's even split. Let's let Ryan and Adam decide. You guys got 5 seconds.
I think I think it makes more sense to come from you than me.
All right, so Adam's our speaker.
He only said that because that weirdo said, I think someone of color should say it. Like, oh my goodness. Oh man, Ryan, you're too good. You're too good of a guy. You're too good of a guy.
If you feel confident in debating immigration politics,
I low-key want to pick
please
the
raise your
right
hand
just
right now.
because of it, but the right is so unhinged.
Okay, we'll
It's
start
hard.
with you.
Hi, I'm Luke.
See,
I'm just going to be
unbiased. I
simple and
cook up
realistic
both
with you guys.
sides.
This is
I
my
do go
passion.
facts.
This is my bread and butter. I work within human trafficking. I know a lot of the gang involvement that's going on at the border. This is what I do. And so I know all of us would be really good at debating these topics, but this is what I'm most confident on. This is one of the main reasons that I am a Republican.
Thank you, Luke.
Okay. I think
Hey,
you
so
should
my
go
name's
there.
Josh. I'm very passionate about the legal immigrant situation just because I worked at Border Patrol and I know all about it. I worked there for a while I was out there, so I could give you stats every single day of what happened.
Oh, both of them have Hey, I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to think. To be fair, I have yet to see someone who's worked at the border be anti-Trump. So I do think that's an interesting point, right? Just because you work at the border doesn't necessarily mean you know the full scope of the immigration situation. I want to point that out. And also, it does help if you're working at the border that it's completely shut down during COVID. But a lot of immigrants did start coming in after that Title 42 was repealed. So
Happened and what's going on.
I think it's an interesting
So yeah, I think I'm the best candidate for talking about the situation.
They both have
I think Luke or Josh should be the top two candidates.
All right, so quiet. Josh, you stand up first. Let's get a raise of hands for Josh. I think that's majority. Yep, that's majority. So Josh, you're the speaker for this side. All right, so our speakers are Adam and Josh. Come to the middle. All right, Josh and Adam, you've both been selected by your sides to debate this issue. You have 10 minutes. Let's see if we can find a middle ground statement that you both agree on.
Yeah, so I think it's important to start out by drawing a distinction between illegal immigrants and people that are seeking asylum. There's a lot of conflating that happens here, and people say there's millions of people coming in illegally. What's actually happening is that we have a lot of people showing up at the border who are seeking asylum, and because we don't have enough immigration judges, enough border patrol, which by the way was in the bipartisan bill that Trump killed, because we don't have enough of those people, we now have a situation where hundreds of thousands or millions of people are waiting to have their cases heard. I think there's something like 3 million cases right now on backlog. So if you want to fix this issue, the way is not with executive order, the way is by passing legislation. But unfortunately, we have a person in Trump who cares more about political power and playing political games with these issues and demonizing people than actually making the system more efficient, which is what the real issue here is.
So for our standpoint, where the asylum and legal immigrants, like it's the same thing. They're still coming in illegally. Like at the end of the day, if you're crossing that border and you're not signing documents, you're not trying to come in through that legal process, you're illegal and you're already committing a crime. And I feel like what Trump was trying to do was just slow the process down, but without that wall being up, for now, it's just unleashed hell on America and the whole entire process. So when I worked at Border Patrol, I worked with them. When we
This
were
man said asylum and just coming over the border is the same thing. What? What? That's like saying someone stealing a car and candy bar is doing the same thing. Like, what?
were standing on posts and doing operations out there, there was about 100 a day, maybe more at different times, just because, you know, wintertime, no one's coming through, you know, it's cold. I've actually apprehended 3 kids, I would say teenagers. They were 15, 18, and 21. And they were out in the cold. Like, these kids don't know where they're going whatsoever. They don't have a map. They don't have anything. They're trying to go over these mountains in San Diego. And we're just like, hey, what are you guys doing? And like, hey, like, it's really bad down in Mexico. Like, we're just trying to get through here. And we don't, we're trying to just find safety, which, that asylum that, they want to get here, they just need help. But there's a process to that. And a lot of them just.
Yeah, but the ones that do get asylum are not doing that. So, oh, damn, I fucked up. No! Ads! I meant to pause. This is so long, bro. I'm not lying. It is a really good conversation, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I really like this format.
These mountains in San Diego.
Oh man.
And we're just like, hey, what are you guys doing? And like, hey, like, they want to get here, they just need. But
it doesn't have to be if we pass the bill.
But at the same time, you want to defund police, which doesn't give money.
I don't want to defund police. That's a straw man.
But that's with what Democrats have done, which
This guy does not know what he's talking about. See, this is what I'm talking about. Just because you do a job that is related to the topic of conversation does not mean you know what you're talking about. It doesn't at all. So what do you
mean?
Yeah, I understand. Most of the Border Patrol agents are Hispanic. They are some kind of nationality that's not they're trying to help their people as well. So they go to Border Patrol, they put them in the back of the vehicles, they speak in their their native tongue, and they're like, hey, like there's a process to this. You can do this, but we have to do it legally.
So asylum is the same thing.
This claim that illegal immigration is just going to go down if Trump is in office is objectively not true. And again, you're trying to get rid of this distinction between illegal immigrants who are called getaways and people that are seeking asylum through legal means. And the issue we have, again, is that there's an influx of people coming after COVID, right? You talk about the difference between Biden and Trump's border policy. There's actually not a lot of difference other than that Biden tried to make it a little bit more humane. But Title 42 gave Trump emergency powers because of COVID. Biden kept that in place for a few years. The only real difference between the two is that Biden had a more humane policy on trying to keep people together, keep them out of harm's way. When you talk about things like remain in Mexico, I know people on the right really like that, but the whole point of seeking asylum is that you're trying to get to the U.S. for safety. So there's plenty of people who are going to do remain in Mexico, and their life is going to be in more danger versus if they're staying here. If you look at the bipartisan border bill that was suggested, if that had been passed, we would have had still a cap on people that can show up, but it would have been, I think, around 5,000, after which the president can say he wants to shut down the border or temporarily cease people from coming in. We have 3 million cases, again, on backlog. The issue here is not that Democrats want people to just flood into the country and eat all the cats and dogs. That's a made-up talking point, and it has no basis in reality. The fact of the matter is that we have a situation where, as people were saying earlier, the U.S. has destabilized a lot of other countries, and for other reasons as well, these countries are experiencing instability. And if you look after COVID, we had a skyrocketing of people showing up at the border. And the way you solve that, number one, is not by demonizing them. It's not by getting rid of the distinction between getaways and people that are seeking asylum. It's to make sure we have a system, which I think you should be able to agree, that is efficient in handling these cases. If we have more immigration judges, then all these people that are seeking asylum that are waiting for 1, 2, 3 years in the U.S., they're going to have their cases heard sooner, and you're probably going to see the number of people here seeking asylum go down as some cases are accepted and some are rejected, right? So the main issue we have here, it's a lack of funding, and funding can't come from the executive branch, it comes from legislation. And I think it's important to note that what Mitt Romney said is that Trump called Republicans, and he didn't say, I don't like this bill. He said this bill is going to give Biden a win on immigration, and we don't want him to have that. So I'm not saying that you believe that, but the person that represents your party is playing political football with this, and there's no basis in reality to anything he's saying. Would you say that we should have more Border Patrol agents and more immigration judges to adjudicate these things?
We do need both, but at the same time, you said defund, we don't have enough funding.
Right.
That comes from legislation. Why haven't they passed that?
Because Trump called Republicans and said, don't vote for this legislation. It was a bipartisan bill. It was written by one of the most conservative people in Congress. It had support from Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney, both of whom have said on record that the former president does not want us to work on this issue because they want to keep immigration an issue for the election. And this is common sense, because if Trump didn't have immigration to scapegoat and run on, what would his platform even be? Like tariffs? That's it.
Business, yeah. So
business.
Trump is a businessman. Yes, he says some harsh things, maybe not the best speaker at times.
This dude got cooked. It was no brain, absolute filet mignon, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Let's move on to the next one.
government stance be on trans
I told
issues?
you the
I'm going to go
Republicans are
to
gonna
the
get
Republicans
cooked if they,
first. So you have 4
if the
minutes to
Democrats
choose your
facts
speaker.
about it.
Really quick, only if you're confident on this issue, please raise your hand right now. 2 of you? Perfect. Or 3 of you? We'll start with you first.
He said
I'm
only
Melissa,
he
and
felt
I'm
bad because they got
transsexual,
cooked less so
conservative,
badly last
and
time.
I am studying to be a doctor and to be a psychiatrist, and I strongly am against children, sexual, conservative, and I
Oh, obviously, Alyssa's definitely going to be going up. Transsexual conservative? For sure. Come on.
am studying to be a doctor and to be a psychiatrist.
Nobody
and
should even
I
raise their hand
strongly
versus
am
Alyssa. I'm not gonna
against children receiving gender-affirming healthcare services because I was a victim when I was a child. And also, I don't believe that trans women should be participating in women's sports. That
Very
should be
quiet
separate.
tone.
They should, if a trans woman wants to be in a women's sports, then they should only be in men. And
thank you.
Hi, my name's Chrissy. I am 21 years old. Funnily enough, I'm also studying to be a med student. I'm studying to be a nurse. And I think that I would be really great for this proposition simply.
Trans versus trans. It's an easy one. I've never seen a trans Republican and trans liberal, trans Democrat and trans. Oh, actually, they're both Republicans. Never mind.
Because A, I'm Gen Z. I've grown up in the environment that is being most discussed when it comes to the trans topics. And B, I was also a former member of the organization Gays Against Groomers. I still agree with a lot of what they have to say.
The voice
but I am
very
well versed
well
in this
done.
subject. And like I said, I've lived this experience, especially for the generation we're talking about currently.
Thank you.
My name is
trans
Jalen,
Republicans.
and
Three
same
trans
as you. I'm
Republicans.
Gen Z, so I feel like I've been around it a lot.
Or he
but
might not be trans, he
honestly,
just might just
I
be
think,
gay.
truth be told, it's a mental illness, and I don't mean that in any type of.
I low key think, if I'm being honest, the trans Republicans are probably going to win this one. So this would probably be 2-2 with a draw, because straight facts, I don't think trans Democrats will win this one.
Amazon
I
fall
think
favorites are
trans
here.
Republicans are clearly going to win this one, and I might be siding with them too.
Body that they are, then. To approach a middle ground that you both agree on,
Blossom
if you want to
versus
share your
Jalen.
personal experiences, go ahead.
Oh, I'm surprised.
I know you just said it's a government thing. Personally, however, I feel that transgenderism is more of a personal issue and a philosophical debate more than a political debate, because I just don't think being transgender really has anything to do with politics. When you turn 18, like, I'm really against children getting gender affirming care type shit. So like, I think once you turn 18 and you're a legal adult, you know, you can go to the military and everything, drink. I think once you become a legal adult, you should be able to make those decisions for yourself and do whatever you need to do. Live your life however you want. However, I do feel like it's being pushed onto people these days, especially my generation. It's just a fact. There's a lot of people in Gen Z who are transgender. I mean, when I was a little boy, I played with Barbie dolls and shit, but like, I imagine, like,
with all
what
his
if I told my
cursing, I
parents,
feel like he's
like,
actually gonna
I
lose
think
this
I'm a
one.
girl,
But
and
I
they
don't
wanted
know.
to take me to
I
a
don't know
doctor,
how
give me
articulated
hormones.
his,
I love being a
Blossom is.
guy, and it's something that children experience at a young age. But I think as they get older, they mature, they grow into their own. I don't think that's the experience for everyone, you being an example. But I think the government should not be allowing kids to run away from their homes, tell their teacher to call them a different name, refer to them as a different gender, and not even let the parents know about it. I don't have any hate in my heart. I think
Oh, my energy
I
is-
get along with all kinds of people, and I respect people's opinions, and all I ask is I get the same grace back.
Absolutely, I have no problem with that. First of all, no disrespect, I don't entertain the mental illness conversation because it's too low vibrational for me. So I want to talk about kids, okay? So when we
But it is a mental. I'm losing all my energy. I might have to wrap it up because I'm becoming energy efficient because I've been sitting here for too long. But there's two very interesting conversations here. All right, we are back. I had to take a long break because I was getting low on energy. So let's lock back in.
Kids, let's be very clear. Kids are not having surgeries. You have to be a particular age. Respectfully, you have to be a particular age, around 16 or 17, and there is a process. There is a mental process. You have to have a mental evaluation. There is a physical evaluation. There is a process there that, ironically, Republicans tend to forget. Let's be very clear. And those decisions should not be on the government's door. It should be in that person's personal home. The parents, the child, and their doctor should be making those decisions. Who are you to sit up there and put your business in their business, worrying about what they're supposed to do with their body? They should have the right to their own autonomy. I am a firm believer that Republicans have a basic level understanding of what trans people are in the first place. I am a firm believer that trans conservatives are an oxymoron. You know, that, and I'm just gonna be quite honest with you. And the reason why I believe that is because Trump is not gonna be here to save trans people. That Botox, that lip filler, that cosmetic surgery that a lot of trans conservatives get, Trump wants to take that away. Trump wants to dismiss trans people.
There's no evidence. Roll back Title IX.
Trump wants to exterminate trans people, and the government should be pushing for trans rights. We deserve access to care as trans and non-binary people. The trans identity is expansive. I think non-binary people can also be trans. Trans can also be intersectional. Trans people can be gay. Trans people can be straight. Trans people can identify as non-binary. And so let's just be clear that the trans experience is very expansive, and we have to be mutable to that expansiveness.
Okay. I will bring it into a philosophical level to prove a political point.
I'm very philosophical. Let's
okay,
go.
Cool. So I want to explain why I think it's a mental illness real quick. I know you said you don't want to get into that, but I'm here to talk my shit, so that's what I'm going to do.
Talk your shit, honey.
I think it's a mental illness. I actually heard it from Vivek Ramaswamy first, and when he first said it, I was like, this is a really harsh way of putting it. I don't know how I feel about that. But the more I thought about it, I was like, well, I think if you're willing to go so far to sterilize yourself, mutilate your body, chop off your dick and turn your vagina inside out, chop off your like, that's stemming from self-hatred, not self-love. If you love yourself, you're not going to do that. And I think it's not, I think there's a stigma around it, the way you're kind of getting reactive. I see your body language. I feel like it's upsetting you, but I don't think it should upset you.
I'm not upset by it. I believe that it's actually empowerment to have those surgeries.
I see what this is just going to be a fundamental principle disagreement. I do think common ground can be made here. But I see this one could end up as a draw as well. I forgot the score, so if you're keeping score, appreciate you, but yeah, we'll see.
As a person that I want to be.
I'll just
because if I have gender dysphoria, let me align my body with how I feel, because I love myself enough to have the surgery. So let's be very clear. That's just your opinion, because respectfully, are you a trans person?
I'm not.
So you're taking up a space where I believe a trans woman should be here talking to me, to be quite honest, because I feel like we as trans women need to be having these conversations with each other. Although she could be a trans conservative and I could be a trans liberal, that's how we move the needle together to get understanding. And
okay, so I've lost all respect for anything that Blossom says, because I hate when people dismiss someone's opinion based off their identity. I'm totally uninterested in what you have to say, because an opinion or a point of conversation can be had by anyone, especially if they're an informed individual who has the provided nuance that is a part of the conversation. So yeah, I'm just gonna skip past this one.
Americans come to a compromise on the topic of abortion.
Really quick before we start, if you are confident in abortion rights and abortion issues in America, please raise your hand right now. Very quick talking points. We'll start with you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm a pro-choice Republican, so that's probably going to be most likely unpopular against you guys. But I was a liberal my whole life. I think this is a very black and white topic for most Americans. I completely respect both sides of this. I'm just saying, I can defend both sides, which I think sometimes is kind of needed in these things.
Thank you.
All right, I did
Emily
speech and
had
debate
a
for 4 years, so I'm
terrible-
very trained when it comes to these kind of
Emily had a
conversations.
terrible
The
point when
main
she went up
issue
against
is
Dean
what is
about the
the
slavery point.
unborn.
It was so
And
bad.
if
I
we
do
can,
think
and
she
that's what
is
the sides disagree on.
intelligent,
If we
but that
can
was such a
come to
stupid
an
and
agreement on what is the
terrible
unborn,
point. Oh my goodness.
policy becomes very, very clear on what we should do. And so
Okay,
I've had training in this area, and I know how to have conversations.
Thank you, Micah.
My name is Jaleesa. I am a child of a rape victim. My mother said, she claims, I don't know for sure, but she's told me that she was raped. And I come from a very Christian conservative household, and I cannot be more thankful for conservatives for fighting for the lives of rape victim babies, of incest babies, and any baby that would be up for abortion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Glenn. When it comes to
Very
abortion,
valid one,
really what it
too.
comes down to, it's a woman wanting to get out of not being accountable for her actions. Bad reproductive.
All right, yeah, don't bring him up. That was a stupid point.
It's bad reproductive choices. They want to get away from it. Somebody has to say you got to be accountable.
Anybody want to nominate somebody? I'm hearing Micah. Who else?
Micah for sure.
Can I get a raise of hands? Who would support Micah for this? That's majority. So Micah, you are our speaker. We're going to now bring it to the
Damn, the
Democrats.
woman
This is a
doesn't get
messy
that
process, but you got to elect your speaker.
Hi, my name's Gabby. I think it's interesting that the argument was made that an abortion is just a woman not trying to be held accountable for her
Stop sticking
actions
to
when
stupid
women
points.
are raped. I also think it's very interesting that you guys are saying
He lefties get so emotional. He made a stupid point. That was a stupid point. It's about why you're so good. Let's move. No, I'm just gonna skip past this.
that we are killing.
All right,
People are
let's do
dying.
it. All right.
So
all the
personally, I
snapping
myself
is
was one of those
ridiculous.
women that got that abortion because of rape. So I feel like when it comes to accountability, that's an interesting point to make. So thank you for that.
Stop sticking to
so
the
yeah, I
stupid
think
point.
I
It's like, it
personally had
doesn't
to have a
help your
personal
case.
take on the matter.
Hi, my name is Ren, and this is basically my entire reason that I'm here. I am a huge feminist, a huge person that advocates for women, and at the end of the day, women that are here already who already have made a lot of relationships with people around them are dying every day, and pro-life seems to exclude the life of the living. So
All right, let's move on down.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm pretty passionate about abortion rights. I'm pretty well versed on Roe v. Wade and Dobbs and the legal doctrine that it rested on and that was undermined, that has had chilling
the
effects on a
OnlyFans
number of other
lawyer.
rights that we very much care about, like contraception, et cetera, that the Republicans are blocking for some
Probably
reason,
pick
and has led
Jasmine.
to crazy state legislation like the Alabama IVF ruling and full-on abortion bans. The only thing I will say is that I believe personhood starts at the ability to deploy consciousness, which is perhaps a little bit more restrictive than Roe, which rests on viability. So if that's not what the majority of the people here believe, then you can definitely give it to someone else.
You guys as a group have to
I
select
agree,
your
start
speaker.
the
Who wants to
consciousness
vouch
as
for
well.
somebody you heard from? I hear a nomination for Ren. Anybody else want to throw? Jasmine and Ren, why don't you stand up? Anybody else want to throw a nominee into the hat? Brianna, Ren, Jasmine. Okay, so let's vote. Raise your hands for Brianna.
Hell
Yep,
no.
in the front right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Jasmine is next here in the blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, right now it's between Jasmine and Brianna. You too.
Personal experience.
All right, Jasmine's saying Brianna should go.
Jasmine, you're more. I shouldn't say that. She
Brianna
seems
and
more
Micah, you now
well-versed in
have
the
10 minutes
legal-
to try and come to a compromise
points of
that you
this
could both
conversation.
agree on the topic of
We'll
abortion.
see how this takes place, though.
Whoever wants to
I
start.
could be.
Yeah, I just want to
completely
say
wrong.
the main issue is what is the unborn, right? And so we have to talk about that. Then we can talk about policy. Because if the unborn are not human or not valuable human beings, then I would agree the woman does have autonomy over it. But if it is a valuable human being, it has the right to life, and therefore we cannot be killing it. Would you agree with that framing?
I agree that a human life is valuable. However, I do believe that, again, it should be the woman's autonomy. It should be her choice, ultimately. If she has a husband, if she does not have a husband, it should ultimately be up to her because at the end of the day, she will be the one to take care of that child.
So I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Does a woman have the autonomy to kill their infant?
We're not talking about infants.
No,
We're
no, no.
talking about-
I'm asking you a question.
We're not talking about infants.
I know we're not talking about
That's a
infants,
different
but-
conversation,
No,
so
no, no.
it's-
So
it's
see, because you want to
pointless.
avoid it, because here's the thing: a woman does not have the autonomy to kill an infant.
That's an
Why?
infant.
Why? Because an infant
born.
is a valuable human being.
It's
Yes.
a born
So
person.
again, so the framing of my conversation is correct. You disagree that the unborn are valuable human beings. Is that right?
I disagree that what is unborn does not have a point in time right now. They are not a living, breathing human being. They do not have a thinking mind. They do not have a beating heart. Therefore, they're not a living human being that we're talking about. We're not talking about an infant. We're talking about what's inside of that woman. At the end of the day, that woman's life, that has to be viable in order for that child's life to come into place. So if her rights are completely stripped away, if she does not have autonomy over her body, that baby can't live. You can't make a baby. We have to make the baby. So if we don't have rights
Well, it
to
takes
make the
two to
baby and to
tango,
live,
but-
it takes two to tango. It does. But what about the ones that didn't want to tango? When it was forced upon them.
So,
when
okay,
they
so
didn't
that's
have the
like-
choice
that's
to
like
be
th-
impregnated.
that's like
No, we're not talking about
3.5%
that. We're
of all
talking about
abortions.
The 3.5% is not a good point, but I will say this: this is not going to get anywhere productive. I believe that in this conversation, the problem is that he's going to come from it in more of a factual, statistical manner, as well as trying to determine viability in regards to a fetus. Where she comes is probably going to go about it in more of the more exceptional cases, as well as talk about bodily autonomy. They'll be talking over each other. I don't think they'll
the
find
fact that there are
They
women
might- they
who
might
are
find
forced to have
resolution.
babies that they did not want to make. That's what we're
Okay.
talking about.
Okay,
we're
but-
talking about
hold
the
on.
lives
So
that are
listen,
not here
listen,
yet.
and maybe
we're
this
talking
is the
about having the
compromise.
choice
Can I
to
speak
be
now?
able to be a
'Cause
parent. No,
you're
because
just-
it's not making sense. We have
Yeah.
to make sense of the
Yeah,
fact
you're just
that
gonna
it's-
steamroll me.
it's not born.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Rape and incest make up like 3.5% of all abortions, right? And so for me personally, when it comes to policy, I'm willing to allow that exception if we say,
See,
hey, the rest of
potential common
abortion
ground.
is okay. And so if that's a compromise you can make, I'm fine with that. Is that something you're okay with? Because I don't think so, because I just think it's a talking point to kind of distract from the main debate, which is what is the unborn. And so you mentioned viability. The problem with viability is that this changes over time based off of technology. We do not want to put what a valuable human being is based on something that can change over time.
Right.
Something like, and so you talked about, you know, they cannot think. An infant, a newborn cannot think. But we're not, that doesn't, but okay,
We're
so
not
a
talking
born
about
child.
born children.
So a born child. So now somehow magically a child becomes a human being once it passes through the woman. Like that doesn't make any sense. What about being born gives you value as a human being?
We have to think about the fact that once that baby becomes a living, breathing soul, that person has to eat, it has to sleep, it has to be clothed, it
She
has to
doesn't
be
have good
educated.
points regarding
If
this.
there's no access
That's
to
why
education,
Jasmine should've
if
went
there's no
up.
access to healthcare, if there's no access to
this
any
is
of the
exactly
many
what I
things that it
expected her
takes for a
arguments to
person
be.
to have a viable, happy life, why are we going to force upon others to have a child that they don't want? If they don't want it, that's their right.
Okay, so I want to mention a couple things. So first, you brought up a lot of other topics that have nothing to do with this. All the pro-life movement is saying, do not intentionally kill a human being. That's what the pro-life is saying. And so now, and then we say, listen, the fetus is a valuable human being, right? And so those other issues are irrelevant.
That's
they
not a
have
fact.
no, they're irrelevant to
They're not
whether
irrelevant.
yes, they're irrelevant to whether we should intentionally murder innocent babies. That's irrelevant. But secondly, you talk about the Democratic
There's certain
Party.
things
You
that
talk
I
about
can
someone like Tim
say
Walz,
about what
who
he's saying,
allows
but it doesn't
abortion
really
up to
matter.
9 months, and then refuses to sign a bill to protect babies who are born. And so, if you want.
Signed a bill amending a 2015 state law stating that infants born alive might be fully recognized and protected under the law. He also signed a bill protecting the right to abortion in the state of in the state constitution, making abortion legal at any point in pregnancy.
Want to look at it as a Democrat-Republican issue, even if you don't agree with me that life starts at conception, the Democratic Party is way extreme on this case, and most Americans absolutely disagree with some of the things that they're doing.
And that's the problem there. You said it perfectly, and thank you for saying that.
She lost this. I don't think she's recovering from this conversation. Is it? Oh, it still goes. Why is it still going? Oh, someone else enters. Oh, wait, hold on.
Because she's not gonna win this one. Let me see how this kind of plays out.
Your vote is your power to protect your rights, to strengthen your community, to change your future. Use your power. Vote by November 5th. Learn more at vote.org/Ohio.
Please leave the ads on my videos and earn rewards. It's a win-win. Pi.org.
Thought it was lower, close to 1. Also, when I think of women getting raped, I'm like, did you get raped? Did you go to the police report? Did you do all these different things? And that's not always the case. A lot of women lie, and I'm sorry, that's a fact. So we need to factor that into everything. When you have an abortion, that is a life. You are taking a life. That is murder. You can dance around that all you want, but that is a fact.
Murder.
When they
is a
say
strong
women aren't using
word,
this as birth
but
control, they are.
sure.
I know several. They take Plan Bs. They have abortions. Frankly, it's actually disgusting. I'm very against that. But that is a real thing. I think there should be a limit. And when you say it's not happening after 8-9 months, it is. You can call Planned Parenthood right now, ask for an abortion.
Emily.
They'll say yes. By the way, Planned Parenthood, the founder, she founded it to eliminate the black race. So that's also why I don't
Emily,
support
can
it.
Emily, I wanna push you though. Between these two options, were you gonna accept Micah's compromise? What do you think the solution is? What is the compromise you would be willing
I think, first of all, I think this is one of the dumbest things we continue to argue about. If it was state by state, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I think if most people in the state want it, I would be somewhere between you two. I'm not gonna lie, if I had to choose a side, I would go to her side.
So you're more pro-choice in all
Yes.
circumstances? Okay, that does sound contrary to the sentiment you were expressing.
How is that contrary? There's a strict
I'm
time
just saying,
limit,
like,
I believe in
that surprised me.
I think she's normal. I don't think she wants to abort babies at 8-9 months, even if she thinks it's not happening.
Yeah,
I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt.
I appreciate you clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to this side.
So a couple things have always been true. There are some things when we ban them, make them illegal, they don't stop, they just get more dangerous and more people die. And another thing that's always been true is when the government tries to legislate parameters for things, those parameters tend to fail in the real world and cause harm. And one thing has always been false. The idea that late-term abortions are an elective procedure that have something to do with someone not wanting to be a parent. The reality is they're rare, but when they do happen, it's pretty much exclusively because someone is about to die or that child will die once it's born. And that isn't okay. So let's be clear here. We want to make a distinction, but the middle ground is women are viable, breathing human beings. Pregnant people are. But if we're going to be in the business of the government deciding when that viable, breathing human being is superseded by somebody else, I think we have a real moral dilemma here. And I think we need to step back and not just assume we know everything, because what we don't know for sure is when life actually starts, unless we're religious.
Hi, everyone. I just come
I
from a
agree
little
to
bit of
that.
a different perspective. I'm actually a physician, and I've actually witnessed 2 abortions. In my training, I witnessed a 3-month abortion and a 5-month abortion. And I want to explain to you what it is. You know when you get your makeup done and they mix the foundation on that little mirror? They actually have a little mirror, and they rip the legs off, they rip the arms off, the body and the head, and they put them and they count them. Do you know why? Because if you don't get all of the parts of the fetus out, the mother's uterus continues to bleed, and it's called retained parts of conception, okay? It was absolutely the most horrific thing you could witness. And I want you guys to say there should be limits. I also don't want people in alleys putting coat hangers up their vaginas trying to self-abort. But you need to understand it needs to be rare. Please watch a video of what it is that you are choosing, because it should be a difficult decision.
I will watch
It
a video
should
of
not
you
be.
watch a woman
Let me
dying
speak. I'm
because she
speaking.
couldn't get an abortion.
I'm speaking.
Now you
All right.
Watch a video.
Right.
If you make that decision, I will understand how heartbreaking and how terrible that decision was for you to make.
low-key
But it is
agree
not a
that it
decision to
should
be made
be
lightly,
seen
and
as
certainly not one that should be made 27 times.
Sheila, I want to
low-key agree.
Quiet.
It shouldn't be a normal.
So I would say a really
thing to
easy
do
middle ground, since they focus so much on these late-term abortions, 8-9 months, executing babies out of the womb. I am totally fine with eliminating that because it's not happening. And I want to mirror what Kamala Harris said when she said it is insulting to American women to insinuate that they are executing their babies after they're delivering them at 9 months. It is absolutely not happening, and all you have to do is a Google search to realize that.
Okay, and then
That's a
Jasmine,
great point.
where do
I
you
agree.
stand as far as like what your end statement is? Do you have a middle ground?
My middle ground would be 3rd trimester.
Okay, so you're saying third trimester, that would be not allowed.
Yeah, because that's what they're focusing on. They always focus on these late-term abortions, which are not happening. So that should be an easy for them.
Okay, we have to stop there. This is an incredibly divisive issue. I ask that you respect each other's differences. We have to move on. And I thank everybody who spoke and gave a specific middle ground. The U.S. has one of the highest gun death rates in the world. How should our country address gun violence? Let's go to conservatives first. You're going to select your speaker.
All right, again, if you guys are confident on gun relations or gun issues in America, please raise your hand. All right, cool.
So I feel confident on this topic because, first off, I lived through the school shooting age. I know it still happens everywhere, but when I think it was at its worst, I was in middle school, I was in high school. I also have a lot of experience with guns. I'm a gun owner, I'm a gun shooter, I'm a proud believer in the Second Amendment, and I also am a big believer that restricting guns is not going to solve this problem. Taking away guns does not solve this problem. And so I am confident on this stance, and I do have stats to back everything up.
Okay, so real quick, I am a gun owner. I am a firm supporter of the Second Amendment. I think that there's other things that we need to focus on in order to lower gun violence, and unfortunately, we have people with evil hearts. And if they're not going to use a gun, they might use a knife. If they're not going to use a knife, they might use a bomb. I'm happy to give you this because I think you're going to do a really good job at it, so have at it, brother.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. All right, really quick. So I think we have Luke so far. We got most votes for Luke. Who's going?
All right, Luke.
Okay, we'll go Luke. We'll go Luke on that.
Bernie Moreno would overturn the will of Ohio voters with a national ban on abortion, with no exceptions for rape or incest.
Absolute pro-life, no exceptions.
Bernie Moreno would erase our rights and our voice. We can't let him.
Spectrum abre cada día una puerta a posibilidades sin límites. Con Spectrum, tus juegos te transportan a otro universo. Y con las velocidades de internet más confiables, haz streaming estés donde estés.
Democrats, you have 3 minutes to select your speaker.
Okay, so I'm going to give every reason why I'm the most qualified person to speak about this issue. I think that number one, we all have the right to speak about it because we're living in a place where we can die anytime and we have a public health crisis. With that, I got that information from the Office of Gun Violence Prevention twice this month when I was invited by the President of the United States, our current sitting President, Biden, to the Office of Gun Violence Prevention to roll out the plan. And I was there when 2 executive orders were signed. Why was I there? I was there because I was invited the week before, March 4th, and I went with a bunch of victims of mass shooting when they told me their stories that I can advocate for. I'm also a teacher who fears for my life every single day, so I know the stats, and I'm a gun owner. So if you try to come about the guns, I will dismantle that.
Oh, she's passionate. I'm kind of vibing with it. I think I'm kind of interested to see her go up. I think
too, because I have one.
All right, she's up. She's up. She's obviously up.
Go ahead. Lady first.
So honestly, I don't have too much to say to start. This is a public health crisis. And to me, this is just common sense, which is what we're lacking. And we look insane to the rest of the world. So the statistics that we have more mass shootings combined in the entire world is absurd. So to me, I want you to tell me why you don't think that we need, let me ask you this. Do you think that we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban?
So my first question, and this isn't, something to try to get at you, genuinely want to ask because I think liberals
the U.S.
get so
has
caught
a
up in
lot
this.
of mass
Can you
shootings.
tell me what an assault
Clearly,
weapon
number
is?
one, it's by
Because they
far,
won't
but
define what it is.
that
There's
is
no
an
definition.
overexaggeration.
Yeah, so an assault weapon, the assault weapon is to be able to kill multiple people in a very short period of time. You do not need that to protect your family. I am a gun owner. I'm not trying to take anybody's gun. I believe in the Second Amendment rights. I can tell you why I have a gun, because I had a stalker. My life felt at danger, at risk, right? But I don't need to have a weapon of war. I don't think that any citizen in our country needs to have a weapon at war, especially when people are dying every day at alarming rates.
So the area that I struggle with this ban on assault weapons is because there's no clear definition, the liberal government can take away all of our guns because they can define any gun as an assault weapon, and that's not good. So we talk a lot about, a big stat people talk about is that we have 30,000 deaths per year by gun. We need to keep into account 2/3 of that is from suicide. And frankly, I think that's the biggest answer to this is we need to have stricter background checks, which I do believe that will be our middle ground.
I like that.
We need to have stricter background checks. I'm a big believer in having background checks every year, every 2 years.
Ooh,
because
I love that.
mental illness can develop. These things can develop. We need to be on top of this. And if you look at school shootings in particular, from I believe it was 1989 to 2024, we've had 174 mass school shootings. Out of all those 174, 15 of them, which is too many, 15 of them were from individuals that had no clear signs of mental illness. That means the rest of that, 159, I believe, they all had mental illnesses. That is where our focus needs to be.
Yeah, so may I interject there? So I
It's
think
part
you
of
bring up
the
a great
focus. It
point,
doesn't
right?
need to be the
So are
entire
you
focus.
familiar, I'm asking you a question. Are
Yes.
you familiar with any of the gun prevention legislation that the new office, which has only been around for a year, of gun violence prevention and the White House, has put into place through the Biden administration? Are you familiar with any of the
I'm not.
legislation? Okay.
And I'll admit that. So.
And that's okay, because that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think that nobody wants kids being killed, right? Nobody wants to feel unsafe. None of us. This should be a non-partisan concept, right? So in the bipartisan Safer Communities Act passed in 2009 by President Biden, there's 3 major things that happen there, okay? One is that folks that are under 21 years old, they have to go through more extensive background checks. So we get pushback all the time from conservatives because people think we're trying to take your guns. No, we're trying to save lives here. Ain't nobody trying to take anybody's gun, but if you can't drive a car, you can't get alcohol, why should you buy a gun? Why should you have a gun? It's absurd. And it seems when we're having this common sense discussion that there's no issue there, but yet we get pushback on that. So that's one thing that act did, right? All right, the second thing that it did is it incentivized states to have universal background checks, all right? So the national system of instant background checks, the NSIC checks for the federal government. After this legislation was passed, including part of the $5 billion from the Build Back Better Act, right? So they did some CVI work, which is community violence intervention work. That was one of the things that happened. But there was universal background checks. You know what resulted? There were 38 million background checks happened after that passed. And this part came in 2021. Guess how many guns actually got taken away? Just give me a number. What do you think?
I don't know.
No, because y'all really always want to say that we're trying to take people's guns. Guess how many people did not get guns out of that 38 million?
I don't know.
300,000.
Okay. So the biggest thing we can do, and my biggest focus on this is school shootings, because that's what we hear about the most.
And I'm a teacher, so I understand.
Yeah, so if we break down the numbers, like I stated, it's about 30,000 per year. Two-thirds of that is estimated to be suicide. That other 1/3, the majority of that 1/3 is urban violence and gang violence.
Yeah.
So if we restrict guns, if we increase background checks, these individuals that are doing illegal things, they're still gonna find guns. And sorry, let me just say this. My argument with this is similar to what someone said on abortion. If you say you restrict all abortions, that's not gonna end abortions. That's just gonna, people are just gonna be doing abortions illegally, and there's gonna be more harm.
And that's why nobody's trying to take anybody's guns.
But if you do that with
we have to
guns,
stop spreading that rhetoric because people are
but
dying.
that's what they're pushing for.
But you're saying that's what they're pushing, and I'm literally telling you because I just came from the White House twice. And let me tell you a little story. I went at the beginning of last month to the White House, right, for a briefing of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. It's a new office, right? They told us what they did. I went home. In the 7 days, then I was invited back for the actual event where there was an executive order signed by the president and the vice president. I'll get to that, by the president with the vice president present.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a second. But the point is, guess what happened in that interim time? My school was on a list to be shot up twice. Okay?
Damn.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're traumatizing these kids having these experiences. If we regulate guns, not take them away, but simply regulate them, then we're making a safer society. And this has been proven in other countries. I used to live in Rome. I know it doesn't
They don't
have
want
to
to just stop at regulation.
But you're saying that, and I'm trying to.
Because she's spoken out
Okay,
about
but I'm
it.
telling
So
you
with
with the
school
legislation-
shootings, I'm a big believer that if we want to prevent school shootings, we need to give proper training, and we need to have either armed security guards, or we need to properly train and back check
I'm good with
teachers
security
to
guards.
have guns.
I like that
Right.
idea.
The shooting that just happened in Georgia, the horrendous school shooting, officers and people who have studied this have came out and said the only reason more people did not die is because there was an armed guard on the campus.
Okay, so let me tell you something.
So
As a
would you be
teacher-
in approval of armed guards on every
So
campus?
glad you asked me that, because as a
Okay.
teacher, I should not feel like I'm risking my. I got you.
You have 1 minute.
I should not feel like I'm risking my life every day because I chose to educate our students.
But that's
Alright,
the world
so
we
listen,
live in,
But do you
sadly.
want my answer? So let me give it to you because I'm actually in agreement. There needs to be better security. However, that is a band-aid. We should not task our educators and traumatize our children and our educators.
Oh my goodness,
Let me tell you
that's
something.
a
As a
great-
gun owner, that's
'cause
very
I
versed in
agree.
how to use it because I've been trained because I had to because I was in fear for
That's
my
great,
life,
man. That's good.
right? They're not signing up for that. Now, we do need more security, but guess what? If we keep protecting the NRA and we putting preceding capitalism, which is not necessarily a bad thing in its entirety, but when we're taking the NRA and we're letting them run our country and our kids are dying, that's foolish and
Run
that's
our
crazy.
country. Big
Listen-
Pharma's running our country.
Oh no,
These
trust me,
tech
they're both
companies
running our
are running
country. Trust
Are you
me,
kidding
trust me, they're both running our country. So the reality is, let me answer your question.
But we're out of-
We need to have security,
We're out of time. All I'm
and we
hearing-
need common sense gun laws.
Okay, what I'm hearing,
Sierra
what I'm
Cook,
hearing
oh my
as middle ground.
Our statistics and our deaths say otherwise.
Okay, what I'm
They're
hearing
not from
as,
shootings. They're from suicides.
What I'm hearing
No,
as,
suicides are down 10%.
okay, quiet. What I'm hearing as concrete.
They are.
What I'm hearing as concrete solutions that have been offered by both sides. I'm hearing increased background checks, mandatory background checks for all gun owners. I'm hearing increased security at schools to prevent school shootings. That might have been an agreement. And I'm hearing something that you just offered was
We need to reinstate the ban on assault weapons.
an ban on assault
Because
weapons.
no American needs a weapon of war walking the streets.
You can't define
agree
it, so
that.
they're going to use that against
I
us.
just said
Okay, so
As a citizen, you cannot get access to a fully automatic weapon.
They
You
have
cannot.
ghost guns.
Illegally, you
okay, but
can.
They have-
we're
but you
not gonna
can't.
we're not gonna rehash that. So it sounds
Well, my
like
common ground is that there should be higher security on school campuses to lower school shootings. That's it. And I think we can agree.
you're
on that.
actually pulling back on the mandatory background checks.
Well, no, I've said like three things. My biggest focus, because we're seeing so many school shootings, we need to have an increase in security. I believe that we should have an increase in background checks and all that, but that's my one stance.
So those are the two things I hear you agreeing on. Do you agree? I know
Oh,
there's a
John,
lot.
you know I want to say so much.
There's a lot you
All
don't
right.
agree on.
All right, no, it's all right. I got a good
Could you
team.
disagree with me on
I got a
that?
good team. All right. My middle ground is that we need to have, not including arming teachers, we need to have safer campuses for our teachers and our students. I do agree on that.
Okay.
And a huge paramount part of that is imperative is reinstating the assault weapons ban and common sense gun laws.
Okay, but I'm just strictly saying, can we agree that we should have armed guard on campuses at every elementary school, middle school, and high school in this nation?
So here's the thing. I think I've already stated that, but we have to. Here's the thing. We have to say why do we need that?
But we're just trying to find middle
no,
ground.
why do we need that?
But that's
She is being a little difficult. I love her passion though. That's a very attractive quality, but she is being a little difficult right now. So with that said, that is all we got for this video. There is a part 2, so let me react to the part 2. Let's do it.